All right, I think we're good. All right, hello everyone. My name is Dave Thomas. I'm Vice President of Sales at Bales, and wanted to thank you all for joining today. I wanted to welcome you to today's informational Friday presentation. Today's topic is why you should use projects in Cloudsuite Financials. We'll be discussing project management in Cloudsuite Financials and the fundamental changes you will see from activities. Let's visit basic setup and use of project management, why you should strongly consider using this module when you upgrade to Cloudsuite Financials. Hey, and real quick, if you're in listen mode, I hear some folks typing. If you could put your PC on mute, that'd be really helpful for the presenter. Thank you. Before we get started, however, and if you're not familiar with Bales, I'd like to take a second to tell you a little bit about us. We've been in the Infor ecosystem for over 26 years. We're entirely Infor focused. We do nothing but Infor implementations. We do upgrades and managed services as well. We support all aspects of the technology, including S3, Landmark, and Cloudsuite, including the HRM and HCM modules, finance, and supply chain suites. In fact, we've been recognized and given partnering awards in 8 out of the last 10 years. Bales is also one of the only women-owned businesses supporting Infor S3 and Landmark products, and we're really proud of that. Our consultants bring over 15 years of consulting experience into the space, with the equivalent of professional experience of over 15 years as well. Some were former benefits managers, compensation managers, directors of supply chain, as well as former controllers and CFOs. Again, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and let me introduce your presenters. We have a senior financial consultant, Steve Sinisi, and the financial practice manager at Bales, Lisa Watkins. The floor is yours. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dave. We're going to talk today about project management. Like Dave said, it's my personal favorite module in all of Cloudsuite Financials. So, you know, whether you guys are familiar with projects and you use activities in your S3 environment today or not, I hope you come away something out of this presentation today. What we're going to talk about is a brief overview of the project module, how the module works fundamentally, what are the major changes from S3 activities to Cloudsuite financial projects, what roles you use in the project module, what's involved in the setup, what the reporting looks like, talk through some of the additional capabilities and functionality that's delivered with the project module, talk through some conclusions, and then I'll open it up for a Q&A at the end. So for those who don't know about activities or projects, it's a project accounting solution. And what that means is it tracks at a transactional level costs for various projects. The most common use of projects is for capital expenses and tracking capital projects, but you can use projects for any kind of project or initiative in your organization. So grants are another common use for projects, marketing initiatives, disaster recovery, so tracking expenses related to recovering from hurricanes or tornadoes. And of course, this year, you know, tracking COVID costs is big, especially in the healthcare space. So we have a lot of clients who are using project management to do that. And there's multiple reasons why you would want to use project management versus your global ledger to track costs like that. And one of the big ones is to keep your chart of accounts clean. So think about it with capital. You know, I've seen clients who use their general ledger accounts to track capital projects. And if you've got 100 capital projects a year and you've been on the ERP for 5 years, I mean, you've blown out your chart of accounts just tracking capital projects, not to mention any of these auxiliary things you could be tracking in projects. So it keeps all of those projects in the project management module and out of your chart of accounts, which is going to make conversions easier. And it comes with delivered reporting that's going to give you some nice looking reports that you can use straight away for presentations. And we're going to look at some of those later. So how does it work? Well, step one is what do you want to track in projects? So coming up with that list of projects that you want to use the project management module for. And on the screen, we've got a real basic flat list of capital projects as an example. And we're just grouping those by year. So you can see I've got summary and posting levels, and you can see that in the project type column. And keeping it really simple here, my summary is my year, and then rolling up to that summary are all of my posting projects. We've got a healthcare example here where we've got a capital project for an ambulance, an x-ray room, an ERP implementation, and a really flat structure. But you could have multiple summary levels. You could really have as many as you want. So I could group those capital projects by department or by vice president, by asset type. And I could make this structure look however I wanted in the system. And ultimately what I'm doing that for is to provide reporting, right? How do the people who want to see the project reporting, how do they want to see these projects grouped together? And that could be different for different people in the organization. The way that your CFO wants to see your capital projects rolled up might be different than how the accounting manager or the CIO wants to see them grouped together. Well, what projects does is it allows you to create as many of those posting summary relationships or hierarchies as you need. You have to have one master structure, which contains all of your posting projects, but then any secondary ones that you create can be subsets of that master list. And again, you'll see when we get to reporting how easy it's going to be to just pull up one of those hierarchies and have it look like a report that's going to show you your budget spend versus your actual spend and where you're at with all these project costs. So it's a very flexible way of designing how you want your project reporting to look. Once you know what your posting projects are going to be and you've defined project numbers, you can then select the project field in your finance structure. So anywhere that you're adding a GL transaction in the system, you're going to be able to select a project number. So on a requisition, PO, invoice, journal entry, allocation, anywhere, that project field is going to become available. And as soon as you release that transaction in the system, that's project's cue to start tracking that spend. Now, one thing we recommend is using structure relations on the project field. If you're not familiar with what structure relations are, it's creating a system rule that says when or when not is the project field valid. So for example, if you were using projects for capital, you might only want your users to select the project field when they're using the construction in progress account. So we can write a structure relation rule that says the project field is only valid when users select the construction in progress GL account. And that's really important from a data integrity standpoint, and then making sure that you're tracking truly capital spend and you don't have users accidentally using a project number on a random expense or an invoice that really shouldn't have a project on it. Something important to consider when you're going to use projects. And it's important to note too, it's automatically tracked. So as soon as that project number is on the transaction, it's being tracked by the project manager. So some of you are probably familiar with activities in S3. And at the end of the day, we're trying to accomplish the same thing here with projects, but there's some fundamental differences. The main thing being that projects is now tied to GL. And really what I mean by that is it's kind of a subsystem of the GL. Think about how like recurring journals is in the GL, but it kind of requires some additional setup to use. But that means that you don't need to run any jobs. to update projects and update the balances in the projects. It's tied directly to GL. It's not a subsystem that needs to be closed at the end of the month. It's easier to reconcile with GL because you can't have project-only transactions like how you could with activities. So you can never have your project module out of sync with the GL. That doesn't mean that you can't move costs between projects. It just means that if you're going to do that, you would do a journal entry and the impact would be to projects and GL. So it could be a debit and a credit to the same CIP account, but to two different projects. So you're taking money out of one project and putting it in another. And then that ability to create as many reporting hierarchies as you need with as many summary levels as you need. That's unique to projects as well. And then there are additional reports delivered that we're going to look at in this presentation. So this screen shows the roles that are in project management. If you guys aren't familiar, Cloudsuite Financials is moving to role-based security and navigation. So you don't move around with those form numbers anymore. You move around by selecting different roles in the system. And these roles all have unique setup screens and processing screens that they can access. So early on for me is like I thought about these almost like the flow charts were in S3, like your ACFL or GLFL. The roles, the main roles you're going to have are project accountant and project administrator. Project accountant can do all the setup and processing. Project administrator also has some access to GL setup. And then you have three roles: project certifier, project manager, and project resource. The project accountant and project administrator can assign projects to these three roles so that, for example, your project managers in your organization could only see what projects were assigned to them. So if you have an IT project manager, you can assign them just your IT project so that when they log into their project manager role, that's all they see. They can only see reporting on those IT projects. So that's a nice piece of security that's delivered with projects. And then I'm going to walk through the basic setup here. This isn't comprehensive of all the setup that could be done in projects because we're going to discuss some additional functionality at the end that's available in projects, but I'm just going to walk through the basic steps that you need to start using projects and start using that project field. So we talked about the hierarchy, right? What summaries and posting levels do I need for my projects? That's step one. Then I want to determine what number am I going to use for those posting projects. And it is an alphanumeric field, but we always recommend you keeping it numeric. It's going to be part of your GL string. So for data entry purposes, conversion purposes, all that, we always recommend keeping it numeric. And then also keeping it a consistent length so that you're not, having some projects that are 5 digits and some that are 10 digits, and keep it clean, keep it a consistent length. And then you can also use a regular expression on the GL side. If you're not familiar with that, it allows you to write a rule that says the project field must be 6 digits long. So that anytime a user goes to create a new project, the system is going to force them to keep it to that 6-digit length. The next required piece of setup is a project status. So the status is important for two reasons. One, for reporting purposes. You'll see when we run a report, we can add a column for project status so that whoever's looking at the project spend can also know, is this project completed or not? Has it been moved to next year? Has it not started? Those are just informational things that are nice to know when you're looking at a project report. But the status can also drive functionality for billing, revenue, capitalization to asset management, and purging if you want to purge old projects out of the system. Flipping the status of that project to a status that has billing, revenue, capitalization, or a purge check to yes is how you're going to utilize that functionality. So once you've got your hierarchy created and your status is created, you can upload it into Infor using Spreadsheet Designer, which is like what add-ins was in S3. So you could upload a whole big list of projects really quickly. You could create the whole summary posting relationship in Excel and then upload it in. Then you need to create reporting settings, which we're going to look at next in reporting. And that's really it. You can start tracking project spend right away at that point. It's really a very easy setup. And that's why I really encourage clients to use it. There's not a ton of setup involved, and there's not a ton of maintenance. You know, you got to keep up with adding new projects during the year, but you're really essentially putting it into the system now instead of just tracking it in Excel or off to the side somewhere. So it's a module that really runs itself pretty well. It's not a labor intensive module to keep operating. So we're going to look through some of the reporting, but the first step is creating reporting settings. So reporting settings are going to drive the information in your reports. And if you look at the fields on here, you can kind of get a feel for it. You are most likely going to have multiple reporting settings created for projects. In the example below, we're looking at actual spend versus budget spend life to date. So for the entire lifespan of that project. If you can see, there's a field on there called reporting period, and it's flipped to life to date. We may also have a setting for year-to-date spend and month-to-date spend, so that you could run the report 3 different ways and see how much did I spend on these projects this month, how much have I spent this year, how much have I spent over the entire lifetime of the project if it spans multiple years. I'm also selecting the budget scenario here, and I've tied this particular report setting to the capital budget, but you may also have a capital forecast. You may have multiple budgets that you track against, so you can have a reporting setting for each. And then down below, there are some variance settings. You'll see when we get to the variance report that there's just some coloring that'll show you when a project is under budget, in this case, coming within 10% of its budget, or if it's over budget. And those are, you can make whatever numbers you want. I've just chosen to use the yellow ranges within 10% of being over. An important note on the reports and projects is that they run off of analytic data cubes. They don't pull directly from the live transactions in the system. So you have to refresh these data cubes. It's very quick. They run usually in a minute or 2 to refresh. And you can schedule them to refresh automatically every, whatever your organization decides, every hour, every night, every 30 minutes. But it's important to know you can't just put a transaction in the system and then go look at a project report and be like, oh, it didn't update. Well, you have to make sure that that cube has been refreshed before the report is going to be updated. And it tells you on the reporting setting the last refresh date on the analytic cube. So that's kind of your cue on whether it's been refreshed recently or not. So once those reporting settings are defined, that's when you'll be able to run the project reports. So that's what this screen is looking at. I'm in my project reports section, and along that bar up at the top there, I've got reports for obligations, variance, period comparison. We're going to walk through the main ones here. On this screen, I'm highlighted on the project obligation report, and then you can see what shows up below are my reporting settings. So I can choose which reporting setting I want to run this report for. Do I want to run it life to date or month to date? And again, I could have more than that. I could have actual versus forecast life to you know, you have as many reporting settings as you need on here. So the first report we're looking at is that project obligation report. Notice how the report looks just like how our hierarchy that we designed earlier. It's showing up in that same structure. It's summarizing based on that hierarchy, except now it's showing me my commitment spend, encumbrance spend, actual spend, what's actually sitting in the GL, and the total of all of those, my budget and my remaining budget. If you're not familiar with commitments and encumbrances, the commitments are, I'll read up here. Commitments created when a requisition has been entered and released, a PO has been entered and released, or a contract has been activated. So if you've got a released PO or requisition out in the system, it's not in your GL, but projects is going to pull that in as a committed spend. And that's a really powerful tool in projects as well. It's something CFOs are going to love, people in accounting are going to love. You're going to be able to see that committed spend before it hits the GL, before you even get invoiced. So you can see what big costs are coming for cash forecasting purposes. And good to know too, whether a project is going to run over budget or not. And then on the encumbrance side, an obligation of amounts to pay for products that were contracted for but have not yet been received. I also noticed that if you have released invoice lines in AP that haven't been posted to the GL yet, they're going to show up on this report as an encumbrance. So as long as that project number has been entered and released in the system, you're going to see it in projects, whether it's been posted to GL or not. And then all these amounts that you see in blue are hyperlinks to the transactions behind them. So I can click on any of these hyperlinks. It's going to show me a list of all the transactions that make up that amount. So for example, if I see a big, $500,000 committed spend in here, I can drill back to that PO and see, okay, well, what are they buying? What is this PO for? And then here's kind of your standard project variance report, budget versus actual. And then we've got a remaining percent. That's where that coloring came into play. So you can easily see, okay, we have 90% of our budget left for 2020. And then you can see which projects are over budget in red. I should note too that all of these reports, it can be exported to Excel as well. So you could always format them differently if you wanted to do any kind of ad hoc analysis that you wanted to. And again, if you have multiple hierarchies, I could look at these reports in different groupings. I have a project period comparison. So what this does, it allows you to select the same period for multiple years. So in this example, I'm looking at period 4 2020 versus period 4 2019, just to see how much I spent this year versus last year in the same month. There are also reporting screens to search for any transaction with a project on it, any requisitions, POs, or invoices. There are reports specific to project contracts and to schedule of federal awards. And then here's a list of some of the additional capabilities in projects that we didn't go into really in this presentation, but there is the functionality to capitalize projects to asset management. So you can accumulate costs in projects. Then when you're ready to capitalize, you change the status, that capitalized status, run a job. There's a little more setup on the asset side. You essentially move those costs into asset management and create an asset through this project management capitalization. Project billing, if your organization does any kind of project billing where you need to track your work and then bill it out through the billing module, projects can support that. Tracking labor effort on a project, setting salary caps, distributing labor costs to the project, calculating burden costs, defining project roles, and assigning projects to resources. We talked a little bit about that with the project manager role. And then period of performance templates, which are, when you create a project, you're going to set a begin date and an end date for the project. And you can always change that end date. You can move it back as the project moves back. But what the period of performance template lets you do is open up other subsystems to post before or after that date range for the project. So for example, you may have a construction project that's going to start January 1st, but you know that you're going to start issuing POs to an architect a month before that project starts. Well, you can put a period of performance template on the project that says allow POs to start 30 days before the project. So only POs can be issued to that project. No other transactions can hit the project. And then on the other side, you could have AP lag 30 days behind the project because you know you're still going to be getting invoices coming in even after the project is finished and completed. So you don't want any new things created. You don't want any new POs going out. You just want to wait and allow some of those AP invoices to come in. So in conclusion, I hope you guys draw these same conclusions, is that setting up projects, it really is simple in Cloudsuite Financials. It streamlines tracking and reporting of capital spend, grants, and any other initiatives that you can track as a project. It helps keep your chart of accounts clean. And whether you're using activities in Lawson currently or not, you should absolutely consider using the project module in CSF. Does anyone have any questions?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay. Thank you. If you guys do have any questions, I think we're going to have maybe some contact slides at the end here. Or my name is Steve Sinise. You guys are welcome to reach out to me. And I'll turn it over to Dave.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is Dave again. Wanted to, on behalf of the team at Bales, thank you for attending today's webinar. If you enjoyed today's webinar, we hope you consider attending our next schedule of for next Friday. I think someone is making a lot of noise with their, could mute, that'd be great. Next Friday, we have two webinar series, an overview of Infor OS and LDAPs at noon, and an intro to intercompany billing at 1 o'clock. If you're interested in attending those, please go to the Bales website to register, or you could send an email to brian.waters@balesllc.com. As closing thought, we wanted you to be aware of our Coffee with Consultants offering. If you have any questions about what you saw today or any questions related to anything related to the Infor products, please reach out to us via our website. Connect you with one of our consultants who will spend half an hour with you at no charge to go over to at no charge. You can have coffee with them, have tea, whatever beverage of your choice, and they'll answer any questions that you maybe have related to the Infor Lawson system. Thanks again for attending, and we look forward to you joining us for future webinars. Have a great day.